Today on the show, I had the great pleasure to welcome the woman who secured the world's biggest live televised music event, Aurore Chatard. She was head of security and her mission was to prepare for everything that might go wrong, really wrong. Terrorism, target attacks, cyber attacks, violent protests, civil unrest, crowd crashes, stampedes, physical assaults, mass panic, and I'm probably missing some. Hi, Aurore.
Hi, Phil.
This famous event is the Eurovision Song Contest. Can you give us first an idea on how big this event is? What are the stakes there?
So, as you mentioned, it is the world's biggest live music event. It's really a competition, so people sometimes forget about that. We have a lot of shows, 9 sold-out shows. What you must understand is a full week. You have an opening ceremony like for the Olympic Games, and through the week we run different sessions with audience and sometimes without. And at the very end you have the grand final gathering many people, and it's broadcasted worldwide. So just to give you some numbers, we had about 170 million people watching the song contest. They can vote and decide who's going to be the next one, and based on who's going to win, this will define the next host broadcaster, the next country hosting the Eurovision Song Contest. This is how we won in Malmö, and Austria will host the next one.
Now, tell us, how did you move from your humanitarian security job to ESC, Eurovision Song Contest, taking care of such a big, high-profile event?
I think I'm very lucky in life because first had a career as a Navy officer in the French Navy for 11 years. Then where I did also a lot of operations. I was a blue helmet. I worked for different organizations like NATO. I was at sea as well on board of the aircraft carrier. When I decided to move to the private sector, I also became a diplomat. This was also crazy, working for the United Nations. Then I had this opportunity to take a great position as the Global Health and Safety Security Director in an NGO in Norway, dealing with refugees. Then I had to go back to Switzerland. Well, it was my decision, and I had the great chance to join the SRG.
For our viewers who are not from Switzerland,
is the Swiss TV and radio here, and I work for the Confederation, but then I moved to the Swiss TV and radio company. I started in February. In May, Nemo won the Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden, in Malmö. Then suddenly I got asked to become the head of security. This is how everything started.
How did you react to that? Did you say, oh my God, it's big? What was your reaction?
First, to be very frank and honest, I did not understand that they were looking for this head of security. So when my manager, who became one of the executive producers, called me, I thought he was looking for a business continuity plan, because for the RTS, so the French-speaking part, I was the business continuity manager. He described the setup of the core team and so on. After a while, I said, okay, so you need a business continuity plan because you're leaving for a year. And said, no, I'm looking for the head of security. And based on your background, are you interested? And then it took me like 5 seconds to say yes. Why not?
And so a business continuity manager is also someone whose responsibility is to make sure things, when the hits the fan, you make sure that the show is running, right? That's your job.
Yes, in fact, it's before the shit hits the fan, because you have to prepare. There's a lot of work, and if it's well prepared, then you have less problems to lead a crisis. You have to anticipate all sorts of risks and then have your plan B in place. This is what I was doing when I started working for the RTS and SRG, and also dealing with crisis management, which is one part, because when things go wrong, then you move from prevention to mitigating measures, and then, of course, managing a crisis. But as I was dealing a lot with physical security before, I got asked to get this position. And what was very specific to this setup, because you start really from scratch, is defining the architecture of the security team. And what was decided is to have a well-integrated system with physical security, health and safety, cybersecurity, accreditation, and crisis management, and so on.
So what makes you so special that you can run such a high-profile and stressful job? Why you?
I think perhaps I'm crazy because I rarely say no. Yeah, you must be a bit crazy to go for such a position and being so visible. To be frank, I didn't know much about the Eurovision Song Contest before, because last time I watched it, I was 10 years old. But I love challenges. You have to be very available. You have to be result-oriented, for sure, to be able to work in a project mode, working with different teams. And most of the time, you're discovering new jobs. I had no clue that those jobs existed. You have to be very fast thinking and taking decisions. You must have the helicopter view of the situation and at the same time having the operational knowledge to know what is feasible and not feasible. And you have to be able to drive very, very fast.
Now, you said there were a lot of threats. What were the biggest threats on your table?
Well, we had quite a few. It comes from health and safety. You all remember the pandemic, and you never know when this may occur again, and it would have a massive impact on your event. Because, of course, the measures may go to cancelling the event. So this is something you have to bear in mind and being flexible enough to take the right decision. We built the stage and in the venue that was just crazy. We had tones on the ceiling. So because there was a lot of rigging. This is, for instance, one job I discovered what they were doing. So protecting, making sure that no one would be injured, had an accident, so that everybody would wear their PPE, so helmet, gloves, shoes, and so on. Of course, then you have security, because you may remember that not this year, but last year, just before the event in Christmas time, there were some attacks, especially in Germany. We had to take that into account, car ramming, for instance, among other sorts of attacks, and cyber attacks, because we are more and more digital. And of course, the question was not if we would be attacked, the question was when we will be attacked. And you have to be ready.
And how, maybe?
Prepare for the worst and pray for the best.
Did you have a huge list of risks? You have probably hundreds of thousands of different jobs. Each job has a risk. And you have, of course, the main ones, but it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it was huge. We had hundreds of risks listed that we worked through. Of course, there was a split of responsibilities. The police was doing its own job. But for our side, the host broadcaster, we listed all risks. We made analysis. Of course, there was a coordination with the local authorities to assess risks. And because also Basel has 2 borders with foreign countries, we also have to take that into account, which is very specific to the geography. And then you have to review those risks constantly and work with the other departments. My team did a fantastic job, I must say.
And so you have this huge list of risks. Just to understand what you were really doing, you're sitting at your desk and you dispatch this list to everybody and say, please find a solution?
No, you have first to explain a lot about what you want to achieve and why. Everybody was committed. I have no problems because people wanted this event to become a success. And then we brainstormed. I had one dedicated person leading and dealing with risk analysis. There were different sorts of risks at different time of the project. We had to review it when coming to the event itself, then adjusting and taking the right mitigation measures, because the aim is not just to have a list, is to make it alive with risk mitigation and implementing right measures.
Can you tell us a little story of a risk, like a pivotal incident or simulation, something that went really wrong?
No, I cannot tell you because it's
a small one.
But a small one is not worth. There was no incidents that we could not manage. But disclosing is a bit difficult.
Okay. Now, is there anything that the next events could learn from your event? What did you do that was so special in your risk management approach?
I think it's always good to get in touch with your predecessors. That's what also I did when I took the job, because you have a lot of lessons learned. And that's what the new team in Austria did. So they called me to have some information. What was very specific in our case was that for the first time, we had a real multi-sites event, because we had the St. Jacob's Hall in Basel. At the same time, of course, we were running the Eurovision Village. The city was running also the event in different corners. But we also had the Arena Plus. This was the stadium where FC Basel normally plays soccer. For the grand final, on top of the main venue, we also had 36,000 people sitting in the stadium, having also a cube in the middle, with a show at the beginning. They could see what was broadcasted from the main venue. And this was unique. What was very specific in our case was also that, as I said, we really had a real resilient function, gathering accreditation, health and safety, physical security, safety, cybersecurity, crisis management, also on the other side. And also what made this event unique was, for the first time, And based on the lessons learned from the previous events, we decided to have only one crisis management team, gathering the three organizations, the host city, the host broadcaster, so the SRG, and the EBU. This was unique. The reasons why we did this was to avoid wasting time in decision-making, being fast, having the full scope, and then taking the decision. By chance, we didn't have to activate it formally. There was no crisis, but it was very important to prepare this team. And I spent 5 hours with them because I created and ran simulation exercises for them on a regular basis so that they were trained. And it's a very good team building. This is what I would really recommend the next teams hosting the Eurovision Song Contest.
Now, here's an important question. How much time did you have for your lunch break every day?
Lunch is very important for me. So we don't know one another well, but I always try to have a proper lunch, and everybody knows that. My lunch break is important. And I like eating sitting and not walking or doing things. So
I'll feel you there. Yes.
I think it's my work-life balance. If I don't eat well, I'm in a bad mood, and no one wants me to be in a bad mood.
But did you manage to sleep enough hours? Or were you like sleeping 3 hours a night?
I think it's a question of discipline. So I really try to discipline myself, throughout the year, because it's a marathon at a high speed level. So if you come broken during the show week, then it's not worth. Then you are not the right person. You must have clarity in your mind to take the right decisions. So what was very important is like training is making sure that you sleep enough, that you eat correctly. And then during the show week, of course, we had less sleep because after each show we had to debrief, which is very important. Debriefing is super important to correct, and readjust. But I think it was okay. I think I did worse when I was working in other fields, like you mentioned, the humanitarian field, or when I was in the Navy.
When did this marathon start? When did they give you the green light? You said your boss told you, hey, here is a job for you. How much time did you have to get everything up and running?
Very little time. Because then you have to make a decision about the structure without knowing which city will host the event. It started in June. We made the visits in July. We decided which city would host the event end of August. Then you start recruiting, and it's a big challenge because finding the right people, having the knowledge, the experience, the language skills, being able to work under pressure is super difficult, especially when it's less than 1 year. Then I managed to recruit the team between end of September to end of the year, beginning of the following year, because then you have to deal with the market, of course. In the meantime, you have to build up everything. So the security concept, building up also the cybersecurity concept, and be able to deploy beginning of the following year, so in January, while you need to present end of January your concept. So it's like climbing a mountain. And when you think, okay, now you can breathe because it's Christmas, you still have a little peak, and then it goes down super fast to the event. And you have to be careful because you have some obstacles sometimes to avoid. You have to take the right decision to jump and be back on your feet. But we did it. So very happy. And I think this is just possible thanks to a great team. The key success factor is having the right people at the right place.
Was that your best or your worst year?
It was a very good year. I cannot say it was the best ever, to be very frank, because I had other experiences with other great teams. It was definitely not the worst because I had far worse teams and situations. No, it's in my top 3.
Good memories. And how were you trained to handle so many risks, you and your team, for such a huge event? Are you ever ready?
We try to be always ready. Santa Paratus, as the scouts or the US Coast Guard say, you try to be ready. I would quote Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until you get to the ring and you get your first hit in the mouth, then you have to readjust.
Yeah.
You always plan and try to see all options and take the right decision. But at the very end, you still have to adjust, to adapt. You have to remain flexible because also one of my motto was to facilitate. We didn't want to become an obstacle for the others because we know that the show would be a success only if everybody would help and support the others. Not like sometimes I hear security says no. No, I try always to say yes. If I say no, it's no because of this and no during this time of frame because we have to fix something. But otherwise, the aim is to facilitate.
Then how do you facilitate when there is probably an impact of huge geopolitical tension? Did this change the game for you in any way?
Well, this changed the game for all international events taking place now. You cannot ignore what's going on the geopolitical side, because we all know there are some tensions and you have to deal with that. The aim is to have the best show ever. I think it's true for all events. We are doing our best, but we cannot say, okay, we are looking somewhere else and ignoring those situations. So, of course, it's part of your risk assessment. Then you have to do your best to support all participants.
Did you have any key principles guiding your health and safety planning? You mentioned a framework earlier.
Our guiding principle was zero serious incident or accident. And to achieve that, we placed prevention at the heart of health and safety. So you have to start with a very good risk assessment. You have to understand what the others are doing and then implementing compliance rules. But it's just because you want to avoid having a big accident that could lead to a drama. And you want everybody to work in a safe environment. So I think what is critical is making sure that you work hand in hand with all teams.
When it comes to cyber, especially, and the physical assets you have, how did you manage to protect all these systems? If someone wants to do some harm, they can just destroy the broadcasting system, website, voting platform, and plenty of other creative solutions.
You must understand the environment and you must understand what are your critical systems, because without understanding the situation, you cannot protect anything. Then we decided to integrate cybersecurity in the security team with physical security, because a very fast cybersecurity incident can have massive consequences on physical security and vice versa. You have this domino effect that you want to avoid. And also, one measure I would recommend to anyone dealing with such a situation is, as early as possible, you have to have measures in place to integrate the suppliers. We also onboarded them. We explained to them what support they could have from us. And I think this was also critical, and this was based on the lessons learned from previous events. Then we built up sanctuaries and we applied hardening and continuous monitoring. And of course, you have to train and test all the time. So in a few words, I would say you have to understand the systems, work together, protect your critical assets or your crown jewels, and stay ready to answer. Because again, cyber attacks, you cannot avoid them today. So you have to have something in place, something robust. And perhaps last but not least, we created a working group gathering the different organizations, so the EBU, the host city, and us, the host broadcaster. And it worked very well. This working group was really fantastic. They did an amazing job.
Seems like you had a good time, actually.
Yeah, it was good fun. And you have to keep this momentum, because this project is short and long at the same time. So it's like a marathon, as I said, and you have to keep, a positive attitude all the time and give everything that you have to make this event a success. And I think this mood is still remaining.
Yeah. And I had some of my friends who were volunteers on the event because they absolutely wanted to participate. I asked them, how do you get the accreditation? How do you make sure that all the right people are coming in and for the right thing?
Well, accreditation is a critical part of a security strategy because you don't want to have any problem inside. It's important to have a good accreditation system in place, especially because you have staff and you have, in our case, we also had what we called guided tours, so backstage tours. So with people coming from the outside.
One of my friends was there. She was doing that.
Yeah.
She enjoyed it. Yeah. So.
We managed 14,200 accreditations all in all, and you have sometimes very last minute requests. So you have to make sure that everything that you can plan ahead is useful because you save time. Because when you have sudden quick requests, then you have to be very fast reacting. We had to define different zones with the production, who is allowed to go where. In this edition, what was new, and I think it was highly appreciated from the delegation, we created a safe space for them, what we call the disconnected area, where people could stay without interview. It was a no filming zone, no picture, and they could really rest. Okay. Don't forget, it's a competition, so it's super stressful. And you have to have this setup, accreditation, but you also have to have access controls, and volunteers and the security teams did a great job. We used and applied an airport level standard, and we had two lines to be fast enough. So one side for the delegations and one side for the staff. I just give you an example also about access control. This is always a challenge when you go to a concert because no one wants to stay outside forever. What we decided was to implement a no-back policy. to avoid any risk, people carrying something bad. To be fast enough, one of my security manager who was dealing with the Olympic Games, he was the security manager for the Stade de France in Paris, had a great idea. So he introduced a plastic bag. So when people arrived with their cell phone, their keys or small items, they put that in the plastic bag and then it went very fast. Why is it so important? It's because we wanted to avoid car ramming risks. Because when you stay outside on the street and there's a car ramming, of course, it can be a tragedy. So avoiding that, we managed to go so fast that even my neighbor next door to where I live once met me after the show and said, wow, I've never been so fast inside a venue and so fast outside. So it went very smoothly and it was thanks to the good job of the security manager.
So this could be a best practice for future events.
Yeah, people could prepare because you're queuing and then you put your items in this plastic bag. When you go through security, tack, metal detector, you remove the items from the plastic bag and then you can enter. Super fast. Great.
And to get ready for these crises, how do you train for that? Do you have surprise issues for the team and everybody has to try to find a solution? How do you concretely get ready for this?
We had 3 organizations in one single crisis management team, and this was really unique. This was for the EBU, the host city, and the host broadcaster, and the cantonal crisis organization had its own organization on the side. The aim was first to build a real team. That's what I did through simulation exercises. I designed scenarios, and we played those scenarios because I think we learn by doing. It's better experiencing than me explaining what should be done and what are the best practices. This is what I call the top chef pedagogy. This is a TV show where people try to be the top chef in the cuisine. Crisis management, the more you practice, it's like sport, the better you are because you learn from what the decision you took. There's no good, best, worst decision. You're taking the best decision in the situation. It's not like red or green, it's so simple. And then you have to make sure that the setup in terms of communication, in terms of escalation is in place. When you are at the event, you have to be ready. We had a dedicated crisis management room with a dedicated team ready to take over because we were all big functions in the operations room next door where we gathered all information. If there would have been any crisis, of course, we would have managed that with the crisis management team. I'm very proud to have had this team. It worked very well.
So this was a living ecosystem. You had your team and you had to coordinate between the public authorities, the private contractors, international delegations. That's a lot of people. What are the challenges in something like that?
Time. The very first challenge was to find the right resources, to recruit the right people. This was difficult because in Switzerland, we not always have the same experience as elsewhere and because of the dialects, the language. And then the other challenge is making sure that all those people are ready to cooperate and interoperate together. So interoperability is really a key word. And to exercise, to resynchronize your team sometimes because we are not all on the same speed. Because you have different phases. During the phase where you're building up the stage and the venue, you're already in action for health and safety, while for cybersecurity, you still plan and test. So you're not on the same speed. Then I think one challenge is to understand the others, having the overview, working well with everybody. Sometimes they are waiting for you to find solutions and you don't want to block anyone, so you have to find solutions. And then it's just a question of time management. And priorities management.
Just a question of time management. That's easy, right?
Yeah.
No problem. Okay. Now, once you've solved the time management issue, which is easy, of course, as we all know, you also have the tech problem. Did you use any specific technologies? We all speak about AI, real-time dashboard. How did you manage to get a clear status? Did you have a big screen saying green, 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 red, orange?
During the setup phase, yes. It was not necessarily real-time with me, but with cybersecurity, yes. They use dashboards to manage threats and incidents. Otherwise, no, because in fact, it's so fast that it was not the most effective tool to use. Now, we relied on several advanced technologies to maintain situational awareness, especially when it comes to social media analysis and threat intelligence. These tools are very useful because it helps you understand trends, detect early signals, and understand the online environment around the event. So this is critical. And smart tech for intelligence and a strong setup to keep the full picture.
Now, you also need the right mindset and get people to be psychologically ready for what they might face. What did the training look like for the crew, volunteers, and the delegations? How did you handle that?
Well, you have to have a strong team spirit and real commitment, and that was the case. And these are the two success factors. We worked, as I said, in project mode, so planning, coordinating. So we used the tool where we could see what was planned, what were the tasks, where the others may need you, because you were one stone in their corner to build up their house. You have to find something that keeps people up, and the executive producers did an amazing job to create, this rhythm and synchronization. So we had, for instance, regular town hall meetings. This is, for instance, something I did not know before, but they hired 2 mood managers. So, and those people...
Mood managers.
Mood managers.
So they come in the morning and say, are you in a good mood, everybody? Sorry, respect to mood managers. That's the first time I didn't know this existed. So.
Those jobs, I didn't know they were existing.
But that works, right?
Yeah, very well. They come with fruits, with sweets to re-energize people and sharing positive energy, supporting people. We also had both from the SRG and the host city psychological support for those who needed that. For the singers, the delegations, we also had this disconnected area where they could be in peace without any pressure from the media, interviews, photos, and so on.
Oh, this bad media and the pressure they put on people. Tell me about it.
Everybody wants to win, It's a big challenge.
Yes,
and then at one point, one of our team asked me to help them with the stress management. So I personally deliver the stress management training session for them. And sometimes just small interventions like this can make a huge difference. I think they were at a level of stress that was very high. So we did a session where I gave them right tools, but also experiencing those tools, how to breathe, relax, concentrate on images and so on. That really helped them coming down. Then they were back on track.
And they were back on track. Now, we're getting close to the end of our nice discussion, Aurore. Based on your experience, risk and crisis management approaches, how will they evolve in the coming years? Is there anything that is drastically changing now?
Well, I believe major international events will need much more a holistic view of risks in the coming years because it's no longer just about physical security. We must integrate those geopolitical risks, cyber threats. We are more digital. Disinformation is also a big risk. Technological failures, because we rely a lot on technology. Reputational and financial risks as well are very important. So you have to have a big picture. I think we go fully hybrid now. You have a lot of IoT, connected devices, drones. So the attack surface is growing. On the reputational side, with one small cell phone, you can create content that can reach millions of people instantly. This is something you have to take into account. Then AI.
And fake content.
Yeah, and fake content as well. Yeah, of course.
Very fast,
AI will play a major role, I think, because on one side, it's helping us to manage threats faster. But on the other side, it's also a vector for risks with deep fakes, automated attacks, and so on. As we are becoming more tech, we also have to take the right measures in place. And last but not least, I think crisis management, you have to train. Simulation exercises are a key success factor. You have to train, you have to use this pedagogy, I think. You cannot prepare for modern crises without practicing them. And I think as a sum up, above all, the key words for the future are anticipation and resilience. Anticipation and resilience, events must build up robust setup, being more flexible. You have to be able to absorb shocks, adapt quickly, and continue operating no matter what happens.
These are quite high requirements for most companies or institutions. Great. So now you must be bored.
No, I'm not bored because based on the lessons learned from this event, of course, we are trying also to implement this good mood and the best practices in our daily job, even if it's peacetime, let's say. It's not boring because we are in the middle of a transformation for the Swiss TV radio company. And there's a lot to do. We are facing big challenges. So challenges are fun for me. So no, never bored.
So you will have plenty of fun now. Now we're coming really to the end. Is there anything we can wish you for the next 2 years? What would you like to have to happen? Could be anything.
Fun and support.
Fun and support.
Yeah, I think for me, what is important is to have fun. And the aim is really to achieve something better for the SRG. That's why I need support. I hope we manage, to have a robust organization in place. Yeah, that's what I hope will come in the 2 coming years.
Based on the discussion, I think you'll have plenty of fun and I wish you plenty of support. Well, thank you very much for spending this time with us. I enjoyed our chat together. All the best. Have a good fun. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.